Hi, and welcome to my channel. My name is Fazila Bijo. I want to firstly say thank you to all of the new subscribers who've actually joined this channel and for your support in terms of the work that I have been doing and the content I've been creating so that many more people can actually access the teachings that particularly Neville Goddard has provided in terms of his books and lectures. Primarily, right now, I am focusing on the law of assumption because there is so much, there is such a depth and a breadth of the work and that is contained in his lectures and his books. I found that it's been life-changing for me from how I created this YouTube channel, how I've created an international presence in terms of my coaching programs and mentorship and teaching, how I've created my lifestyle, my relationships, my money flows, how I manifested a lot of things that I will be sharing on this channel. So join me this week in terms of this particular teaching and this video that is going to help you understand why my video from last week actually went viral, one of the highest viewed videos on my channel. And it's actually helped people discover the other videos that I have done in terms of some of Neville's books. So on to this week, I explain this really controversial video, and the title that I had used last week was The Almost Illegal Practice in Terms of Revision. Now, the teachings that Neville has brought through to us in The Law and the Promise, chapter 3, Turn the Wheel Backwards, he actually talks about this being a practice that was not condemned in the gospel and the Bible. And by the way, I will be talking about how Neville's work has helped decode the Bible. So we're going to jump into this week's video and this teaching. Okay, so this was the most controversial video on revision on my channel. And now I explain this teaching in more detail. Now, I know some of you have resonated with what I created last week to explain this for those who've been triggered by it, but also for those of you who are connecting with the work that I am bringing through and the content I'm creating. So if you didn't know this, and if you're new to Neville's work and you're new to the law of assumption, I really want to highlight this. Parables. Parables are stories. And you need to know that the Bible was decoded by Neville Goddard as a spiritual metaphor, a psychological drama of certain basic principles. The stories of the Bible contain a powerful challenge to the thinking capacity of man. So that is something I really want to stress. It requires critical thinking. If you really want to know how to make your life manifest, if you really want to know how to manifest your life, how to create that dream life, how to actually apply the law of assumption and all of the other laws that are applicable from a spiritual perspective, it requires us to have critical thinking in terms of being open-minded, actually reading, studying, and contemplating, reflecting on what these parables are teaching us. What are these stories? Because the underlying truth is that these are psychological dramas of man and not historical facts. Please make sure that when you're studying Neville's work, when you are looking at the work on my YouTube channel, these are psychological movements that are happening. These are not historical facts. It will help you actually get over some of the conflicts that I see many people go through and the confusion because they are taking the Bible from a literal perspective of being historical facts. That is not what I am talking about here. Go and look at Neville's work, read, study, and apply what he teaches, and you will see that the law of assumption is actually very real. Now, something I'm going to stress throughout this video. It is up to you to test the law. Neville says it, because when you test it, you will prove for yourself that assumption truly does harden into fact. The law of assumption is that your consciousness creates reality. Parables were used over 2,000 years ago to teach humanity the pathway to spiritual awakening. Now, if people just received the message that God is your imagination. You are the creator of reality. They would have not gotten it in that time and space for where consciousness was. Stories were told, and as particularly if we look at it, they were told around the fireplace. This was how traditions were handed down from one generation to another. So please, please, please remember, when you go through my videos, when you are reading Neville's lectures or his books, you've got to start to understand this is about a psychological movement, just psychological drama. I will touch on this and expand on this in future videos as well. To rewind to last week, the title that grabbed attention, and it was the almost illegal imaginal practice. I explained this in this week's video. Now, you need to know that the source of this document is chapter 3, Turn the Wheel Backward from the Law and the Promise. I thoroughly 100% encourage you to please read and study what Neville teaches. It is the one way, even if you do not understand the material initially. Now you can come to my channel and I can help you follow along as I explain the different practices, especially this one. The almost illegal practice is not to be taken literally. The understanding of this is a parable. Now, parables contain a story. They may be the outside story, but you've got to look for what is the central truth in that parable. Imagination is God's great gift. Now, even Einstein quoted this. The power of imagination is the ultimate creative power. If you don't know this, Einstein would go into meditation where he would hold 2 pennies in his hand, sit upright in a chair, and go into the meditative state. And what he would then do is contemplate a particular idea or something that he needed to actually get an answer for. And when he went into that meditative state, holding the pennies in an upright position, feet on the ground, and he dropped into that space of the theta brainwave, he was actually reaching from imagination the answer that he knew that imagination was going to provide for him. Because in imagination, we know then that imagination is God's great gift to us. God is love. God is infinite power and wisdom. Maybe you've heard about infinite intelligence. Well, this is what it all is. God's creative power is imagination. Imagination is love. Imagination is power. Imagination is wisdom. Now, here's a quote from the Bible, which is giving you his creative power. He gives you his son, Christ, which is illumined imagination. This is defined in the 2nd chapter of Paul's letter to the Corinthians, which says, the Son of Christ is the power of God and the wisdom of God. Now, all characters in the Bible are representative of a state. They are not historical people. And if you can actually keep that in mind as you go through these videos, it will help you to start to understand how Neville decoded the Bible, but it will help you understand what the lessons are. And this is the path in terms of awakening. Now, because of this great gift, wouldn't you not want to use it if you had to see someone that you loved who was unemployed, didn't have money, was sad, lost? They were in great need, and maybe they were even embarrassed to ask for help. What would you do? Well, you have a great, great process and practice available. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. Before we go there, here's something that many people ask is, how is it that by representing others to ourselves in imagination as better than they really are, by mentally writing a letter to make it conform to our wish, which means you rewrite the situation of lack of unemployment in your imagination, you revise a scene of maybe an accident or an interview that didn't go right. that with all of this, how do we change what seems to be unalterable facts of the past? Well, one of the things that you must remember, what your imagination created, it can uncreate. And you can do this, not just for yourself, but for others as well. Now, imagination is not only conservative, which means it builds your life from the images that are supplied by memory, what has been programmed into the subconscious, but it is creatively transformative because you can alter a theme that already is in your reality. You can alter something that you are observing, which you are not happy with. And that is what brings us to this practice of the unjust steward. So here, if you were to represent your loved one in your imagination as being employed, that they are happy in their relationship, that they have everything that they desire, is that not something that you would be willing to actually practice? Because when you persist in exercising in your imagination concerning your friend, concerning the world, you go on to reconstruct it. And you will shape them, you will shape him in the manner that they truly wish to be elevated to. And all you'd have to do is exercise your imagination with a strong feeling that you know it is done. And all of this is possible because of this great gift that we have available to us, which is God's power, God's wisdom, infinite love. It stems from imagination. Now, revision. Again, the almost illegal practice and how you use this particular process that Neville talked about in chapter 3 of the Law and the Promise. You revise, you repair, you reconstruct. You change the contents of that particular situation or experience, and you rewire it into the subconscious mind. What do? We take the old content, we change it. It gets pushed out. It gets rewritten with the new desire, with the new content. Whatever the new desire is that you wish to see become manifest for yourself, for your friend, for your loved one, that is what you will go into imagination and see as true. This is something Neville has also spoken about, is we must learn to distinguish between man, who is all imagination, and those states that he may enter. And this is what he talks about in this particular chapter. You are falsifying your facts in terms of what one state was. You falsify the records of it into the new state. And that's the thing. Many people will be dissatisfied and continue to complain. And what they will do is eventually it becomes something of a habit and the belief, and they gradually are believing that they've attracted bad luck, whereas what they are doing is creating the situations where they can only have bad luck. So let's go into the teaching now of the unjust steward. I want to highlight and I want to say this is based on Neville's teachings, and it's based on some of the further research I did from the Law and the Promise of chapter 3, Turn the Wheel Backwards, the Cup of Experience, and the Unjust Steward. Now, I will encourage you, please go ahead and read up on those particular lectures and the book. But follow through here and maybe come back to the teachings here, because it did take some study, some level of reflection as well for me to bring it all together here. Now, at times it might feel like it's too much. I suggest you listen once with just to hear it in terms of your awareness. Listen again and you can make notes for understanding, and listen a third time in terms of, I get it, here are some of the questions. What was it about this part that I'm not getting? And so listen to some of the things that I touch on in each part. Now, the unjust steward is a parable. It is a story of the steward who is accused of not keeping a proper record. And he is now called to provide an account of his records by the rich man whose possessions he managed. Now, let me be very clear. In the story, the characters are all wicked, the steward and the man whose possessions he was managing. In terms of the role of the steward, it is a person who manages the resources of another. In our modern day times, it could be a business manager. It could be your financial advisor. In the time that the story was written, over 2,000 years ago, steward had the authority over his master's resources, and he could go about transacting in his master's name. And the steward was actually someone who had the utmost level of trust from the people that they were employed by. Now, what happens in this parable? It is a story. The rich man who employed him calls him to inform him that he will be relieving him of his duties because he found that he was mismanaging the resources. He was being wasteful. Now, we'll come back. I'll touch on this again, so I'll remind you, because the story does start to feel a bit more complex. And I mentioned that all stories have a central core of truth. What is the outer story is secondary. So I'm going to help you to understand the meaning behind this. Now, the mental falsification of facts is what we're going to talk about. We alter our world by means of a certain, and it is illegal, as Neville points it out, imaginal practice. And that illegal part is the mental falsification of the facts, not an illegal act out in the world. Not where people are thinking it's a violation of moral, legal, law, etc. Please reframe. Please understand. This is mental falsification of something that is out in the 3D world that you are not happy with, that you see as maybe being in lack, or you see as being true that someone is sick, or being true that they have a bad relationship. By means of falsifying this mentally, we are then becoming more intentional in terms of how we use our imagination to alter that which we are seeing out in the world. Now, all of this is done in our own imagination. So this is a form of falsehood which not only was not condemned in the Bible, but it was actually approved, because the greater teaching here is that you can, through your imagination, through the power of God's love, through the power of God's wisdom, you can actually see that the person is raised out of their situation. In fact, A Course in Miracles says nothing real can be threatened because nothing unreal exists. And the things that are unreal in our world are lack, illness, having poor relationships, being unhappy. That is something that man enters into. Now, that is a state of consciousness that we enter into. And if we enter a state of consciousness, we sure can leave it. And that is what the power of imagination talks about, is we can reprogram our subconscious mind. We do not have to dwell in the programming that is sitting out in our 3D world. Because by means of this falsehood, man destroys the causes of evil. And the cause of evil is that we are going against God's promise, which is you are God and you can have everything that you desire. Now, to sin against yourself would be to miss the mark. And that's what evil is if you desire something, if you desire to become the best salesperson on your team and you don't achieve that target, if you haven't become the #1 salesperson in your team in let's say the first year, you're missing the mark. And the thing with missing the mark is that you can try again. And that's what sin means. The definition of sin is to miss the mark. And if you miss the mark, you can try again. And so by means of imagination now, by means of reprogramming your subconscious mind, you can now change the scenario that you were seeing in 3D, that you're seeing in your physical world and realize, I am the cause. And if I am the cause, I can change it. I can change how I was thinking. I change how I felt about it. Because whatever I have created in imagination, I can uncreate. And that's what the unjust steward does, is by changing the process in which he handled his master's affairs, he realized, I'll be kicked out. I now need to change something. So this is what you would do. You would recall the day through the right thinking. Now, something here that many may get thrown by is there's an old term called righteous mammon. Mammon is actually earthly goods, property, riches. When the steward learns that he will be turned out of his stewardship, that he could no longer represent his master, he goes out and goes to all of the debtors and asks each one in turn what was owed to his master. One of them said 100 measures of oil, and he said, sit down quickly and write down 50 measures of oil. Then he went to the second one. How much do you owe my master? 100 measures of wheat. And he said, you sit down and write 80. So what he did was he falsified the entire record of his master. And what he then did was he became friends with them. He felt, I am too weak to work and too proud to beg. And by doing this, I'll make them friends of mine. And so when I'm fired from my job, they will know that they are in my debt. Now, here's the thing. This is what you do when you recall your day. Because this is how the story is, it evolves. Is if you don't like what happened today, you are invited, you are told to actually emulate, copy the unjust steward. You simply recall the day and you revise those aspects or every little aspect of your day that did not conform to how your day would have gone. In this parable, the steward decides, I do not like that I will be out of a job. So he went ahead and he started to adjust how he would like to be taken care of. And that was making friends with his master's debtors. That is where being unjust is actually the right thinking, because you are now looking at what are the facts that are saying, I do not have my desire. I am now going to change and modify, or I take the day that I had and I make it conform to my wish fulfilled. So let us say that you may have had a day where a deal fell through, or that your interview didn't go well. Now, in terms of being unjust, you can remain unjust to yourself and actually accept that, or chances are you are here to learn about manifestation and you want to know how you can create a better day. You want to know how you can have that dream job or how you can have a new home. So you are modifying the mental imagery, the what you're seeing in your 3D reality that says, I do not have. You are now changing that with the righteous thinking that says, I now have that. Again, Neville says, you are invited to emulate the behavior of the unjust steward. If I do not do it in this way, if I am not faithful to this unrighteous mammon, who will trust me with that which is real in the world? So here's where it gets interesting. What Neville is saying is, if I'm not faithful to this unrighteous mammon, which is in this parable, the earthly goods, the properties, the riches, if I cannot in my imagination be faithful to that which I find in the earthly realm, in the 3D physical reality first, who will trust me with that which is real in this world? And that which is real in this world is what? Your imagination. Or getting a home that you think you can't afford, or increasing your income when you don't have a good paying job, or having that partner. Now, we can bring all kinds of things into the world, but here in this reality, if you are not able to stay faithful to your wish fulfilled, you will see that that lack, that thinking, that capacity of not being able to keep to your wish fulfilled, not fully believing and knowing that your imagination creates your reality, this is where it can feel like the physical world is more real than you. And what Neville says here is, if I am not faithful to this unrighteous mammon, to start with first manifesting my needs, manifesting those things that I truly want. I want the home, I want the money, I want the car, I want the riches. And to actually be able to see that you test the law and you prove that it works, you know then that when you can exercise the power of your imagination, you are able and you will be entrusted with the riches of the world, which is that your imagination creates reality. And the power behind that is that you are able to be resurrected as God. You see that your illuminated imagination, your enlightened imagination, is what you receive as the riches. So the steward decided he did not like what was going to happen to him. And so he decided to falsify the records by striking a deal with the debtors that that he would reduce their debt, and he knew then that they would take care of him. Now, who keeps this record? In the true sense, it is your memory. So the subconscious mind records everything. If we are to believe then in the lack, if we are to believe in the state of consciousness where I do not have, then I do not have becomes our reality. Because you know what you saw today, you know what you heard, you know what the mail brought to you, and more importantly, how you felt. And what happens then is all of that is recorded within you. Your subconscious mind is taking all of that as real. Remember, there is no filter in terms of the subconscious mind. I talk more about this and in detail in The Feeling is the Secret. There are 4 chapters. I highly recommend that you actually watch those to understand why it's so important that you do not allow the subconscious mind to harden whatever experience it is that you may have had in the day, which was not in accordance with your desire, it was not in accordance with the wish fulfilled. It is quite important that you revise before you go to bed, and you do not take that disappointment or failure, misunderstanding or conflict into your dream state. Subconscious hears everything and believes it. Perhaps someone told you they were having marital problems. You are therefore called to falsify what you heard. Because would you prefer that you heard their message of distress and you lived with that? Because what you have witnessed, you assume to be real, becomes a fact. And the answer is no, not if you are an unjust steward in terms of falsifying the lack, in terms of falsifying where you see someone is without. You are called to give an accounting of your day at the end of it. Have you falsified that record? The one that says there is conflict, there is lack, there is no money, no funds, this person's unemployed, or I don't have a job. That is what the unjust steward does, is falsifies the state of lack, takes the old content and changes it so that the new content can be what he truly wants to achieve and have as his wish fulfilled. So are you going to allow the day to pass without changing the record regarding a person in distress? You have the power available to you to do just that, change it. So in your imagination, and you can sit down really quickly and change whatever you heard. You can do this in literally 30 seconds. So what you can do is, if you cannot get to 100% change in state, change it by 50%. If you can't get 50%, change it by 20%. In that parable of the steward, where he spoke to the debtors and he said, if you owed 100 measures of a particular item, write down 50, write down 20. It's up to you. If you cannot get to the total opposite, so let us say that you would desire $1 million. However, you don't have a job right now. Now it's a big stretch. So this is where you can start to look at, where am I currently? What would it mean if I had to double my income? So you don't, instead of trying to make this big leap to whether it is $100,000 or it's $200,000, instead of trying to make a leap where it's not going to hold true for you, where you do not have faith because it is too large a gap between where you are now and to jump to that extreme, change it, do it in steps. What for where you're at, increase it by 20%, increase your income by 20%. It would be where you go into your imaginal state and see yourself getting a 20% raise, or see your business doing 20% more than last year. Remember, you change all of this in your memory. You change the memory of the conversation. You change it in imagination. Now, the reason you can do this for someone else, the reason you can do this for others, is because we are all connected. We are all one in human imagination. The golden rule applies in everything in terms of how you actually use your imagination. Do unto others as you would have done unto you. Because what you do for someone else, you're actually doing it for yourself, given that we are all connected and there is only oneness. You yourself, when you see someone else in a higher light, what you do for them, you do for yourself. So here's something Neville talks about. The secret of imagining is construct your imaginal scenes that imply the wish fulfilled. So if there is something that is saying there is lack in your 3D reality, you will mentally falsify the account to yourself to program your subconscious mind with your desire. But the next step is, when you have that scene, you must think of it with strong feeling. There must be a strong desire, one that says it is already yours and you totally, 100% believe it. So therefore, what I've said before, even though you may want to change the scene by 20%, you must 100% believe that and feel it. So when you drop into the imaginal scene, when you bring that scene of whether it is about a partner or you are being congratulated for a new job, you will deny what your senses are showing you in your 3D reality. You will falsify that to the extent that you believe it, and you occupy that state. You occupy that feeling, that state in your imagination, and you will loop that until that feels natural for you. So let's say that you are wanting a new job, and in terms of that new job, you see yourself being congratulated and you've got a 20% increase. What you would do in that imaginal scene, like it is here, you're being congratulated, well done, welcome to the company, and you know that that new job came with a pay rise. And all you do is you keep bringing in that feeling of certainty, and you have faith, and you know that it is done. So please leave your comments in the section below. This was quite an involved teaching, and the practice that's available to you. What insights, what teachings have you gained from this week's practice? Once again, thank you for being part of this channel, and thank you for your support and your comments. It really helps me to know that my content that I'm creating is supporting you. It's helping you to understand these teachings. So as our state of consciousness evolves, we start to expand and we open up to more and more. So this is what I'm inviting you to, is be willing to learn, be willing to explore, so that you can keep expanding in terms of your consciousness. My name is Fazila Bijo, and it is my pleasure to have you as part of my channel. Please like, please subscribe, please share, so that these teachings, these videos can reach more people. I will see you in the next video.